Hey guys, Luke from Hands and Heels Racing. Very apologetic about the late preview show for Stakes Day today, which actually kicks off in about 45 minutes. So just been very pressed for time, and obviously with such a big week of racing and had a pretty big week at work as well. So this is the best I could do. I'll try and fly through it so it gets all done before obviously race one, and hopefully a few of you guys can listen and hopefully back a few winners anyway. So just touch on Oaks Day. Disappointing day, obviously. If you followed my tips and preview show, I was pretty off the mark pretty much, throughout the whole day. I had that big Aloisi ticket, which was disappointing that didn't come in. When you get them at $29 5 months in advance and they start at $1.60, it feels a bit, you feel a bit empty after the race when it doesn't come through. But that is the game, I guess. There's ups and downs, and Thursday was just one of those days where everything I seemed to do or angle I seemed to take was just the wrong rein. But I read a quote, and it was somebody who's in the racing industry, and they did say that when you're going bad, you're never as bad as you think you are. Because I did feel pretty down, and it's taken a little bit to get mentally up again for Stakes Day. And when you're going well, you're never as good as you think you are as well. So it's just, you can go from zero to hero pretty quick in this game. So, just get back on the horse today, and today's a new day, and hopefully I can pull the right rein and take the right angle a couple of times today, and hopefully we can find a few winners. So we'll get straight into the card. Rails 3 metres again for Stakes Day today. So I think it played pretty fairly on Thursday. I think there was runners at obviously 1 on pace, runners at 1 near the rail, and then there was a few that made sweeping runs as well. So I think I'm expecting it to play fair again. Not sure how the straight's going to play. I thought on Thursday they were going to come down the outside, but the inside, I only read once. I already put my bets on, which was once again just one of those things that just worked out pretty poorly for me. But I read that the penetrometer actually read that the track on the inside was a good 3 and the track on the far rail was more like a good 4. So that was after I put my bets on, anticipating the outside to be better. But it is what it is, and I think today will be a bit more even, and we'll wait and see. Race 1 up the straight will give us an idea, especially for the Darley Classic, as to where they're going to run down the straight. So we'll get into race 1, and once again, tough race, 2-year-olds up the straight. It's been a pretty common theme throughout the week. There's been a lot of 2-year-old races up the straight, so not getting too many chips invested. Obviously King, the Snowden runner, has to be respected. Any Snowden 2-year-old or even 3-year-old, if you're backing any Snowden 2 or 3-year-old, you're probably going to be turning over a profit. They just tend to churn out these 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and King's one that's super well bred. I think it's $1 million colt. Trialled poorly. His first trial was poor, second trial was very, very good. Comes down to Flemington. I've heard a whisper that he's their slipper horse, but I do find that a little bit strange because, I don't think there's a need to send him to Melbourne this early if he is a slipper horse. You think, if you look at a horse like Capitalist, who was their slipper horse, he didn't have to come down to Melbourne. So, look, I'm not saying that he's not their slipper horse. I just find it an odd move that if he is their number 1 seed for the slipper in their eyes, that why is he running in today's race? But has to be respected. I'm just having a small nibble on Encryption because I had him as a big follow from his debut run at Caulfield. He's bred out of Lonhro and Guelph, I believe, so should be better over a bit further, I think. But 1,000 metres up the straight can often suit those horses that might be better suited to 1,200 because the pressure can go on early. They get a chance to wind up and finish off. So I think he'll be better for the first up outing, and I think the open spaces of Flemington will suit him. Not a bet with high confidence, as I said. There's a lot on debut. Bionics was also good behind Setsuna, who's come out and won on Cup Day, so you've got to respect that form line there as well. And then you've got a few other unraced runners. Belzella trialled well, and you've got the Waterhouse and Bot stable with Basteron, so it doesn't even matter about any trials before that. You just see that combination. You've got to respect that at the moment because they're flying. So small bet on Encryption because it's a horse I want to follow, but not a lot of confidence in the race. We'll go to race 2. At first I thought it was a race I wasn't going to bet into. There's not that many going well, but there's a horse there that I have had a bit of time for in the past, on Sidium Ruler, and I had a look and I thought $15 was, a fair each way price because he trialled well. He's been for a spell. He's trialled well. Disappointing first up over 1,700 metres, but it was a reasonably strong race behind a horse like Odeon, who has since come out and won again. He was beaten 8 lengths, but if you look at his first up record, he's had 5 starts for 1/3. So he traditionally improves pretty significantly first to second up, and now he gets up to 2,000 metres, and he's a horse whose probably best distance is around that 2,400 metre range. So I think 2,000 second up is a lot more suitable. He gets a big Flemington track, so he comes away from Caulfield, gets to Flemington, gives him a chance to wind up, nice soft barrier, and a reasonably small field. So I think he'll be close enough, and I think I'll expect him to be finishing off. And because I don't like anything else in the race, I just think as a horse with that scope to improve second up, over more ground, suited Flemington, and a horse who I've had a bit of time for, I thought $15 was a fair each way play. So once again, I don't think he's immoral or anything like that. The horse simply might not be going that well after his first up run, but I felt at the odds, I felt there was a good price to find out that he can improve second up out to 2,000 metres. So having a play on Insidium Ruler, Tarquin's probably hardest to beat, but looking through the rest of their form, a lot of them are going pretty poorly. The fact that a horse like Shamkir from the Darren Weir yard is, what's his price, about $6.50. You know, he couldn't get the job done at St Arnaud last start. You know, says enough about the quality of the race. So just a small play on Insidium Ruler. Race 3. Actually, I haven't had a play in the race because I didn't like the prices. So Fastnet Tempest is every man and his dog's tip for the day. Their moral of the day. I mean, Dan O'Sullivan's tipped it as a $1.90 chance, I think. Ben Ascari, you know, everybody on Twitter, it's their best of the day. I just haven't seen enough I haven't seen the horse enough to be diving into $2.30. It's had based off its last start, of course, deserves to be favourite. Flew home at Sale behind Moss and Dale, but before that, it was its first up run in Australia. I think it was 8th in I think it was a Weekend Hustler Stakes, beaten a couple, 3 lengths maybe. You know, it was an okay run, significantly improved second up, but I haven't seen this horse run consistently. I don't know if this horse can consistently string them together. You know, gets the blinkers on, did a bit wrong last start as well. It could be the type of horse with a trainer that I don't know as well. I just think there's a few unknowns, and I'm sort of going in a little bit blind there to be taking $2.30. At $3, I'll probably find a bet. I missed the price about that $2.80 to $3 range. So $2.30, I'm happy just to watch it go around. Probably wins, but I'm not going to be investing my chips on it. Man of his word, I think, ticks a few boxes, and I did have it as a horse to follow off its last start in Sydney. 1,600 metres is probably its best trip in a big track suits. But Melbourne Way has to be a question mark, and you know, barrier 3 could be drawn up inside. Just not too sure how his form lines stack up against a horse like Jacquinot Bay and Fastnet Tempest. And then obviously, from man of his word, I'll go into Jacquinot Bay, whose actual form lines I'd be pretty keen to back. My issue with Jacquinot Bay is that he hasn't won for a hell of a long time, and he continues to run into a couple better. But his Toorak form's good. He wasn't beaten that far in the Group 1 Toorak handicap, and before that he was only getting beaten by a length and things like that in these pretty strong races. So I think form line wise, he's actually got the best form line. But I think Fastnet Tempest is obviously the one with upside who's probably you're looking to peak after his last start run. So they're my 3 numbers. I've got Fastnet Tempest, probably from Jacquinot Bay and Man of His Word. With only 7 in the race now, I can't make an each way play. Otherwise I would have been keen to play Man of His Word each way when you're getting 220 to place with 8 in the race. But now there's only 7 in the race. I'm not going to be investing each way when you're only getting 2 when you have to run top 2 to run a place. So probably going to be watching that one. For an early quaddie, I'll be playing early quaddie. I'll throw in Fastnet Tempest, Man of His Word, Jacquinot Bay. Coldstone probably next best, but I don't really think it's a winning chance. So, and Master Reset I found last start. You know, he was unsuited at Moonee Valley. Obviously that was that was Cox Plate weekend. Caught wide on a day where he kind of needed to be on pace rails, but he was beaten too far in a weak race for me to consider here. And Raw Impulse, I just don't think is going that well. So I thought he had every chance last start at Sale on the same race as Fastnet Tempest, and Fastnet Tempest blew straight by him, and I think has more scope to improve into this. So 1 top pick, and then 2 and 4 second and third pick there in race 3. Race 4, Supply and Demand Scratch. He ran on Thursday at Oaks Day. So Light in My Veins is the favourite, and he was actually, looking through his form, he was pretty poor last prep over in Western Australia, but he's come over, he's had a decent spell, and first up he flew home late behind Rich Charm. He ran some great sectionals. Rich Charm has since come out and franked the form on Derby Day up the straight, and he's won 3 out of 4 second up, and 1400 metres a big tick. So he's a bit of a box ticker, Light in My Veins. Drawn to get that swooping run. Barrier 9 should get cover. You know, my query is the consistency of the horse based off last preparation. He sort of ran poorly in quite a few races when fancied. So that's my only query with him. Duke of Brunswick's cooked, couldn't possibly back it. I think $11 is way too short. Muller's been going pretty poorly up in Sydney, not considering backing it either. Howard Be Thy Name's a bit of a query runner, obviously probably needs more ground, but he's had a year off. And some of these distance horses can sprint well fresh. Barrier 14 he'll get back, and he might be something that storms home late. Early quaddie, probably throwing him in at $41. You know, you're happy to take a cut on the percentage you're going to be getting if they can romp home at $41. So not backing him, just going to be throwing him in the early quad. I think Bassett is probably overs at $11. Completely unlucky last start at Moonee Valley. Got stuck behind the leader in suspense. Looked to have a bit to offer. Suspense won. Hell of a Street was second. Hell of a Street come out and won on Oaks Day, beating home a horse like Ullman, Supply and Demand, who I have a decent opinion of. So I think the form's been frank there. He's only ran once at 1400 metres, so not much of a sample size there or exposure at 1400. But being out of Savabeel and being a bit older now at 5 years old, I think 1400 metres shouldn't be an issue, and he's got a soft draw as well. So definitely in the mix. Lord Aspen, I thought was huge overs at $11, but since the scratching of Supply and Demand, and obviously a lot of money's come for it as well, he's now in a 550, and I think there's no value there at 550, but I've certainly got him equal top pick with Light in My Veins. Obviously Bassett as my third pick, and then I've got Howard Be Thy Name as the blowout. So I actually got on Lord Aspen as a place chance at $2.50, and I think that's a reasonable price. If he gets back out to $7 to $8, I might throw a little bit on him to win. He has to parade well. Obviously, I get some mail there, but I think at $5.50 he's into a reasonably short quote. The issue with Lord Aspen is I think he mixes his form as well. So at the end of last preparation, he was pretty poor, but I think he's going well. His last start was good. He loves Flemington and he loves 1400 metres, and he won this race last year, and he gets barrier 2 McAvoy, so he's a bit of a box ticker as well. So early quad there, I'll be throwing in Lord Aspen, Bassett, Light in My Veins, and Howard Be Thy Name as a blowout. Sadaka, sorry, is the other one. I skipped over him, but Sadaka actually ran really well last start over an unsuitable 1200 at Moonee Valley. I think barrier 1 at Flemington, up to 1400 metres, I think he can potentially lead this race. And we saw him last preparation, once they took him forward and they led some races, he ran along at a clip and he proved pretty hard to run down. So I'll actually throw Sadaka in. I'll probably go pretty wide in the quaddie in this race. So, and he's potentially one I can have an each way play at. So my only play in the race at the moment, just to clarify before I sort of say that I'm backing every runner in the race, I'm not. I've had a play on Lord Aspen to place. If he gets a 7 or 8 and parades well, I'll have a bet on him to win. Probably going to watch Light in My Veins go around because I just don't, in an open race, I'm not really keen to dive into $3. Howard Be Thy Name just going in the early quaddie. If Bassett parades well and I'm getting 12s and 13s still, I may back him each way or Sadaka each way. So I'm looking at one of those each way runners, Bassett or Sadaka or Lord Aspen if it drifts to 8. I could probably looking to back 2 in this, and you can do that when you're getting longer odds. Race 5, Queen Elizabeth Stakes. I have QE close to a moral here, so I'm not going to go through the race that much. The fact that Kiwia is $4.60 second favourite, I thought Kiwia presented as 4th up last start, rock hard, fit, ready to win, and Kiwia was first up, and it was a bit of a sitting shot because Kiwia had its back, and if Kiwia couldn't run Kiwi down over 2400, I think over 2600 Kiwi's better suited because he's a horse who's performed well over 4000 metres. He's run 4th in the Melbourne Cup, and Kiwia, to me, his best runs have been at 2,000. I think 2400's okay, but I think he peaked on his run and had every chance last start. So I think Kiwi's better suited to beat Kiwia again. Venga Mask is running well, beaten home by Sis Montaigne last start. I think he's probably a similar horse to Kiwia, similar class, but I have Kiwi once again outstaying him. Cool Chap, I think, is a little bit outclassed. Gaelic Chieftain has been a little bit costly this prep, and I think is well found enough at $4.20. He's well weighted, and I think he can potentially beat Kiwia because of the lighter weight, and I think he can outstay Kiwia over 2600 metres. But once again, I find it hard to see him getting past Kiwi. So pretty confident. I've had a pretty good go at Kiwi there. If I had to back something else as a saver, I'd be looking at Gaelic Chieftain or Venga Mask each way, one of the two. For the quaddie, I'll be throwing in Kiwi. I could take a narrow quaddie with just Kiwi outright. Gaelic Chieftain definitely. Real Leisure can run well, and perhaps Venga Mars. So I'm happy to be against Kiwier at the price. I just can't see how it turns the tables on Kiwier. And then some of the others have different form, which you can just throw in as a different form line, just in case Kiwier runs poorly. So we'll go to race 6, the Matriarch Stakes. I was very keen on Falaika, who was scratched this morning. I just thought it ticked every box and had the 2,000 metre form, Flemington form, soft gate, and I just thought it was going to be very strong through the line where there's a query at 2,000 for a lot of these runners. So I've now played Savapinski because on breeding at 2,000 potentially suits. The Waterhouse and Botyard are flying, as I've said, on pace runner. So they're boxes that are ticked. Brenton Avdalah's a good jockey as well, and I've also heard news that it's been set for this race. So I think 550 is well enough found because I think it's got to take another step to be winning this race. But I think it ticks those boxes and there's a query on every runner. So I was happy to have a play at Savapinski. Other runner I was happy to back was Heavens Above, who hit the line very well in the mire. Hasn't been at 2,000 for a while, but has won over 1,900. Failed in the Oaks as the Queensland Oaks as a 3-year-old over 2,200. I think they initially had this horse penned as a sort of Oaks horse, but since come out that she's probably at her best around a mile, 1,400 to a mile. But based off breeding, being out of Street Cry and a New Zealand mare, I think she's probably best credentialed out of the top 3 mire runners to run 2,000 metres, and I think she's drawn to swoop. I think she can hit the line hard and be chasing down a horse like Savapinski, who'll be on pace. Prompt Response, I respect the yard again. I respect her form lines. 4th in the mire is a great run after being 3 wide. But being out of Beneteau, and I had to query at 1,600 metres for her. I had to query her at 2,000. I have to have a horse like Heavens Above getting past her at this distance. But wouldn't surprise. Flying Jess, same thing. 2,000 metres has to be a query, but I respect the form lines. Payroll has run well over further than 2,000, but I have a question mark on 1,400 straight up to 2,000. Being a not a single doubt mare, I don't think 2,000 is her best distance. She probably is more of a mile horse that could potentially get 2,000, but I don't think the setup is that great for the race. Tahani, I'll throw in the quaddie because, she's 1,700 up to 2,000 and has to take a class step again. But I thought she improved last start, 1,600 up to 1,700, and potentially, there's a chance that this horse can improve again up to 2,000 metres. So that's the way I'm playing the race. Backing Savapinski and Heavens Above, throwing Tahani in the quaddie, and probably Prompt Response as well, just because I respect the stable. Race 7, we'll go to Dali Classic. And in her time has been scratched this morning. I believe she had some hoof problems, or at least one hoof problem, and she's ended up being scratched. Bodes well for me because I played all in this race with Impending and Malaguera. Actually got a very nice price at $12 Impending now. Not sure 650 is any value with Impending now because he has to take a step. He has to prove he's up to a horse like Chautauqua, Red Zell, even Vega Magic if he brings his best. But I like Impending because he's the fresh horse on the scene, and I thought his run first up behind In Her Time was huge, flashing home from the back. Drawn wider. I've heard there's a bit of a whisper, a few tipsters out there expecting the outside to be the preferred going with the last day of the carnival and the inside chopping out a bit. Drawn to get that swooping run, and I think he'll be suited by the straight because he'll be strong late, being a horse who's performed well over 1,400 and even 1,600 metres in the past. So Impending's my top pick, but I think well found enough at 650. I liked Malaguera's last start in the Manicato. He had the best closing sectionals. He was on the inside, but he hit the line well and he won this race last year. He got an outside gate as well, barrier 14. And he's profiling nicely. My query with Malaguera is that maybe he needs to be fresh. His best performances have been fresh. But in saying that, I really like the way he performed last start, second up. So that put not put to bed, but put me a bit more at ease in regards to that he doesn't need to be fresh to perform well. So I think he's definitely in the mix, and I think potentially overs at $10. Terra Vista's probably cooked and needs to be fresh. He has had a 60-day freshen, but I prefer him to be 100 days freshen, and this is a pretty hot race as well. Vega Magic at his best, I think is probably the best sprinter in the country, but he's hard to back off last start. And we all know, if you've watched my past videos, my stance on David Hayes and Dabenig runners is that they can often go to the well one or too many runs too many. And I think Vega Magic could potentially be at the stage that he's trained off. You got to remember this horse was pretty forward first up in the Regal Roller, and then he went to the Memsie. He peaked for the Memsie, won the Group 1 there. They tried to get him to peak again in the Everest, and he ran so well, and now they're trying to get him to peak for a third time, and that's a pretty arduous campaign. So happy to oppose him at the price. If he wins, probably feel a bit sick considering I was on at overs last start, but that's just the nature of the game again. Red Zell, great measuring stick because he'll put himself on pace. He's proven up the Flemington Straight, and he just continues to win races. So he's going to be hard to beat. My slight problem is with the straight is they're not coming around the bend, and some of these back markers can be quite a way back around the bend. In a distance race, they can fan out a bit more, and the back markers can be a little bit closer and potentially get into the race a little bit easier. But I think everyone's trying to find something to run him down, but you've got to respect his performances. And $4.40 is pretty generous, to be honest. And because of the prices I'm on with him, Penning and Malaguero double figures, he's probably going to be my save in the race. I'll be looking to chop out on Red Zell because I respect him so much, and I've been on him this preparation as well. Chautauqua, definite winning chance. I think Flemington is probably suitable to him. He probably shouldn't be as far back. He's proven at the straight, outside gate as well, so he's probably drawn to swoop and flash home. I think he'll be in the finish. My query is that potentially he's better on a soft track, but his hard track form's good enough, and his Flemington form's good enough for me to, even his last start, his preparation has been going quite well. He's been flashing home, and maybe today's his day. I think $6 is a fair price. Not backing him because he's not really one of mine, but can see that he's a decent winning chance. Redkirk Warrior is a query runner because he absolutely loves Flemington. His best performances have been at the straight, but they have also been fresh as well. So my query is, does he need to be fresh to produce his best up the straight here? But got to throw him in a quaddie because he's $10, and this guy's explosive best up the straight probably wins this race. Rock Magic's outclassed. I think Speed's best runs have been at Flemington. He could be the blowout chance. He actually hit the line quite well in the Manikato after being unsuited. So he's a horse who's hard to trust, but when you're getting $31, he might be worth throwing in the quaddie. Man from Uncle was poor last start. Miss Rocks, proven at Flemington. Not a bad roughie. I think potentially at her best, she's around the mix of some of these horses, probably outclassed to be winning. And she's had a very strange prep. Robbie Lang's pretty much had her all over the place. But this is probably a reasonably suitable race for her. And I think Super Cash needs to be fresh. Her best runs are fresh, and I think she's a little bit outclassed here as well. Alright, Emirates Stakes. So I'm going to roll through the runners. 2,000 metres, Group 1. I'm just saying no to Happy Clapper because of 2,000 metres. Big difference between his 1,600 metre form and 2,000 metre form. Classy horse. His 2,000 metre form isn't hopeless at the top level, but really doesn't really give him much of a winning chance. He's exposed 2,000 metre form. It's somewhat, I think, it's lacking a little bit of class and probably isn't going as well as he was in the autumn. Galo Chop is an interesting runner. $7 is probably fair because I think the start before winning the Caulfield Stakes was very good form. He faded in the Cox Plate, but the way the Cox Plates run, the pressure goes on a long way from home, and he was entitled to knock up late, and he did. So if you're happy to forgive that run and attribute it to tempo, he's in with a great chance. But once again, there's probably a few runners that are looking to be on pace here, so I don't think he's going to get it his own way. Toast and Starter mixes his form. His best is clearly good enough to be in the mix here. But, after last week, it was a bit disappointing on Derby Day in the Cancelar Mile. And I have a feeling this is a bit of an afterthought. You've got to respect the trainer. Not without a hope, but $11 I'm preferring elsewhere. Sense Occasion's outclassed and needs it wet. Tom Melbourne scratched. So Folkswood boxed on well in the Cox Plate. I thought he ran a creditable race, but he was still beaten quite a long way by Humidor and Winks. The gate's the issue for him. Barrier 15, where does he get to? He might come across and try and lead, but he might do a bit of work doing so. And I think potentially, whilst he's a decent horse, I don't think this is a stellar addition. I think this horse is crying out for something to produce a peak to beat a horse like Folkswood. Harlem's cooked. I don't know what the stable are doing with the horse. It ran so well in naturalism, and since then it's been very poor. And I think the horse has got none. If it wins, so be it. Happy to be wrong again, but I'm just going to draw a line in the sand and say that Harlem's cooked. Sosa Bond, Jesus, poor horse. I mean, the horse was a sprinter at the start of the prep. Then they tried to set him for mile races. Now he's up to 2,000 against the big guns. if Sosa Bomb was a steak, he wouldn't be well done, he'd be charcoal. He's just that cooked. You know, I feel sorry for the horse because it's got a bit of ability, but I'd be shocked if it won. Odeon's flying, and you've got to respect the horse that's flying, and 2,000 metres should be ideal, but he's outclassed, so you've got to understand that as well. He's taking on a lot harder horses than what he has been. Takes me up to Ginger Nuts, who's my top pick in the race. I think he's ready to peak. If you look at his last preparation, his 4th up run was one of his peak runs in the Avondale Guineas. 2,100 metres, he ran well 4th and 5th up. They were probably his 2 best runs. And he's back on a dry track. So whilst we've only got 3 or 4 runs off the top of my head that he's ran on a dry track, his performances were very good. Even over an unsuitable 1,400 metres, he was a lot closer than he has been on the wet track since over 1,400 metres resuming. So I potentially taken the angle that he's better on a dry track without a whole heap of evidence, but with evidence that he's at least as good on a dry track. Because if you look at the stats, I think he could be better on a dry track. And I think the setup is really good for him. He goes 1,400 to 1,600 to 2,000, gets the grounding of a 2,000 metre run, now goes 2,000 again on a big track. And I think he profiles as a horse that can peak on the day while a lot of these others are here as an afterthought or potentially training off. You know, he'll get back, so you've got to watch for the pattern of the day. You want him to be able to swoop if you're on Ginger Nuts. And he does need to take another step. This is weight for age, open class. But, you know, I thought the horse showed a lot of ability. You know, at the Rosehill Guineas on a heavy track, beating home a horse like Inference, who hasn't ran too badly at our top level here in Melbourne. So definitely Ginger Nuts, some small queries, but there's queries on every runner in this race. And I'm having a save on Cliff's Edge. I think he's had a long prep, but he's in the right stable for a horse that's had a long prep. Darren Weir. You know, you could say maybe the form's not looking so good with Aloysia getting rolled on Oaks Day, but I think there was clearly something wrong with Aloysia. She didn't run the distance, or she's trained off. You know, I thought she ran a great rating in the Moonee Valley Vase, and the fact that Cliff's Edge has beat a horse like the Main Stage by 5 lengths the start before. Main Stage was pretty close up in the Derby, so I think the form's been franked despite Aloysia's failure. And, you know, with the lightweight, he'll go forward, and I think he's going to take a bit of catching. So, you know, I've got top pick being Ginger Nuts. I've had a save on Cliff's Edge, a smaller bet. Obviously, make a little bit of profit if Cliff's Edge can get home. In the race, I'm not going to say I'm taking a set against unfavoured runners because, you know, it's not really the correct info. Slightly against Volkswood, the price just think is a little short. I think Gator Chop's a reasonable price. I can understand why you back him. And I'm against Happy Clapper. I think he's probably the biggest unders of the race because I don't think he runs that great over 2,000 metres. Alright, race 9, last of the day, last of the carnival. 1,400 metres for 3-year-olds. Listed race. And as is my top tip, I was quite keen in the Coolmore actually at a long price. And he ran well. I just didn't get paid out for it. He was out wide in the worst part of the track. Showed some great sectionals late. The horse probably should be suited by 1,400 metres if you look at his racing pattern, breeding and his past. Should be suited up to 1,400 metres. And obviously that Coolmore form is pretty strong form for a race like this. It's definitely by far the strongest form reference. I'm thinking potentially he may be slightly short for a horse who SP'd so long in the Coolmore. I think he might be slightly short here. With everybody thinking, okay, he comes out of such a strong race. You know, he's probably immoral here, but I don't necessarily think that the horse hasn't shown the consistency to string wins together. And sometimes there's horses that run a bottler in a good race. They come down to a weaker race and they just don't take that next step. I think Tomasa and Tesla are interesting runners. Not sure who I'll back out of the two or if I'll back any. Want to hear some Mounting Yard Mail over. You know, if one of them parades great, I might have a small each way bet on one of those. They're lightly raced. They're obviously coming out of wins in benchmark 64s, so this is a huge step in grade. But you know, every horse steps up in grade someday. You know, I'm sure there was Winks were stepping up in grade one day and had to measure up. You know, every horse does. A lot of them aren't going to be up to this level, but you know, in this case, in a race where I'm looking outside potentially of Andaz, I think they profile as runners with a bit of potential. Trekking I think is a bit overrated, but maybe 1,400 might be the trick for him. I'm not penning him, but I'm not going to be backing him as well. Barrier 7 Abdallah, lightweight, he does tick a lot of boxes. And if the horse could run through the line, you know, I'd be pretty inclined to think that he's a chance here trekking. So whilst I'm not going to be backing him, I think he's a bit overrated and a bit under the odds. I can see this race there isn't a whole lot of depth there, and that is a winning chance. Muraqueeb's in the mix for me as well. He wasn't far, he's only 2 lengths behind Formality in the Blue Sapphire. I think that's pretty good form for this race. 1400 metres is a question mark. Racing pattern suggests that it might suit, but breeding suggesting that maybe not. I'm not too sure. Well, not that it's not a tick 4. It's not really, his breeding's not against 1400, but it's not really saying he's definitely going to improve his distance. So not too sure there with Muraqueeb. And Sir Coney, I think his form's okay, but I think he's got too much weight. So that's it for the last Icon of Dubai's been scratched, and I thought I was happy to take him on. I think he's a bit overrated anyway. So we'll go recap here. Race 1, small bet encryption, respecting King there. Race 2, playing on City and Ruler each way. Race 3, no bet at this stage. I had Fastnet Tempest on top, but not keen at the price. And man of his word, Jack and Obey, second and third picks. Not playing each way because there's only 7 runners in the race. Race 3, I have played Lord Aspen to run a place. I would play Lord Aspen if he gets to $7-8 and provided he parades well. I can't guarantee you that. I don't do Mounting Yard Mail myself, but I get tips from Mounting Yard Mail. I'm going to trust their decision making as to how well he's parading. And I think Bassett potentially can play each way if he parades well, or Sadaka each way. I think they've both got good claims to run on pace and be hard to catch. Light in my veins, I'm not against. I just not keen to dive into something at $3 in that race. Race 5, I think QE's close to a moral, having a pretty big bet there. Bet of the day for me, QE. Race 6, I'm playing Savapinski as the on-pace runner, being out of the Waterhouse Yard set for this race at $5.50, and I'm backing Heavens Above as well as a bit of a back marker who can charge at them late, coming out of a strong My Classic at $6.50. Dali Classic, I've played Impending and Malaguera, both at $12 all in. Impending for a better result, and obviously he's firmed more so than Malaguera. So then my plays there, and I'm probably going to look to chop out on Red Zell about the $4.50 mark. I think he's obviously the top pick, and if I can save and get my cash back if he wins, that'll be great. Happy to take on Vega Magic. No knock Chautauqua, pretty neutral on his chances. I think he's obviously a chance, and a bit scared of Redkirk Warrior because of the straight track form. Race 8, Emirates Stakes. I'm backing Ginger Nuts as my main play. Smaller bet on Cliff's Edge. I think he's a danger, and obviously these runners just come with a bit of different forms with the Cox Plate. Not potting Galo Chop and Foxwood, they're obviously winning chances. I have a query over Galo Chop's last start. Maybe he might be training off, and I have a query over Foxwood's mapping position. And I don't think his last start was that much, it wasn't a huge eye catcher in the Cox Plate where I'm just saying that's the strongest form. I think Ginger Nuts has claims, as does Cliff's Edge, their form lines. And the last of the day, no bet for me as of yet. I might not bet. It's a pretty open race. Muraqueeb, Trekking, Andaz, Tomasa, Tesla, the chances for mine, which are 5 runners. Probably slightly against Trekking. I'm not going to be backing him. I might back Andaz if I get a bit of a drift and some good mail. Otherwise, I might play each way Tomasa or Tesla. Tesla, one of the lightly raced progressive runners that look suited up in distance based off their breeding. So enjoy the day, guys. I'll be back next week, back to normal procedures, up with just your regular weekend videos. So it'll be a bit quieter then. And there's one I like in Sydney today. I like Stonebrook in race 7. He's quite short, $2.20, but I think he'll run them along a bit faster, and up to 1,500 metres will suit him today. Just Dreaming the Danger, but I think if they go quick, I think Stonebrook's one who'll be there to tough it out at the end of the race. So enjoy the day, guys, and I'll speak to you all next week. Cheers.